It had been months since Ngozika lost her last job, and yet here she was, still jobless, struggling to secure a new one. She was broke and desperate. Day after day, she scoured the city, applying for any job she could find, leaving no stone unturned, but she never got any. Her savings were beginning to dwindle, and every night she stayed awake, wondering how much longer she could keep this up. One day, she left her home very early in the morning. She was determined to find a job and not to return empty-handed. However, she was met with disappointment again. Ngozi dragged her feet through the streets, heartbroken. Everyone she knew seemed to have their lives going on well, while hers felt at a standstill. My rent will be due in few months, and I can barely afford food. How will I manage this situation? She asked herself. Just as she was about to head home in defeat, a familiar voice called out, Ngozi! Ngozi Obi! Is that you? She turned, and it was Chidinma, her university roommate, standing beside a car with two children dressed in their school uniform. Chidinma looked every bit the successful woman. Ngozi's heart sank. She hadn't expected to run into someone she knew, especially not Chidinma. Chidinma, she blinked in disbelief. They hadn't kept in touch after uni. Their lives had taken different paths, and seeing Chidinma now only reminded her of how far she had fallen. Oh my goodness, it's really you. How have you been? Chidinma pulled her into a tight hug. Ngozi tried to return the enthusiasm, but her energy was drained. I've been better. To be honest, I'm actually looking for a job right now. It's been rough. Chidinma's smile softened, more like that of concern. Oh no, I am sorry to hear that. What kind of job are you looking for? She asked Ngozi. Honestly, anything at this point. I've been searching all over town, but no luck. It's like every door is closed to me. Ngozi, you can't be looking for a job when my husband can give you one. Ngozi's eyes widened. What do you mean? She asked. Well, it's perfect timing. Actually, my husband's company is looking for a personal assistant. His previous one had got married and moved out of the state, and he's been struggling to find a replacement. You would be perfect for the role. Ngozi felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. Are you serious? Absolutely. Give me your resume and I will speak to him tonight. I'm sure he will take you on. Just go home and get ready to start work because, trust me, you will be getting a call soon. Ngozi could hardly believe her ears. Chidinma, I don't even know what to say. This feels unreal. Chidinma smiled and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You deserve a break. I will make sure Ejike gives you a chance. Are these your kids? Ngozi asked. Yes, my dear. I've just picked them up from school. As you can see. Oh wow, you seemed to have a perfect life, Ngozi exclaimed. I'm happy for you. Chidinma smiled and thanked her. As they parted ways, Ngozi's heart raced with excitement. It felt like the universe had finally thrown her a lifeline. The next morning, she woke up with renewed energy. She checked her phone every few minutes, anxiously awaiting the call. By noon, her phone buzzed and Chidinma's name flashed on the screen. Hey, Ngozi, so I talked to Ejike and he's on board. He's really excited to meet you. Can you come to his office tomorrow morning at 9? Yes, absolutely. Ngozi could hardly contain her excitement. Great, I will text you the address. Just bring your resume, but honestly, it's just a formality. You've got the job. Ngozi concluded the call with a triumphant whoop. It was happening. Finally, something was going right. The next day, she dressed in her best outfit and strutted to Ejike's office. When she arrived at the office, Ejike greeted her with a warm handshake and a charming smile. Chidinma has spoken very highly of you, he said, guiding her to his office. I think you will fit in perfectly here. After a short interview, Ejike officially offered her the position. Ngozi left the office that day with a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first few weeks, everything went smoothly. She was diligent and focused. Ejike seemed like a fair and kind boss, and the work was manageable. Over the course of several months, Ejike started staying late at the office more frequently, often working long hours into the night. Chidinma, ever trusting, believed him when he said the workload was intense. But it wasn't long before he began to emotionally distance himself from his wife, even neglecting his marital responsibilities and intimacy. At first, Chidinma thought nothing of it. After all, everyone has stressful days at work. But when those stressful days became steadily, she began to wonder. Could things be going wrong in the office and he's not telling me? She wondered. I will ask Ngozi to discreetly check if everything is all right. Chidinma called her friend Ngozi and asked her how things were going in the office. Ngozi told her that work has been tough lately. I leave late myself, she said, and Ejike is always still working, usually the last to leave. Chidinma felt relieved by the fact that everything was okay. As if things couldn't get stranger, Ejike's new personal assistant, Ngozi, began to dress more provocatively, wearing see-through tops and short skirts. Meanwhile, rumor has it that she was pregnant. The office buzzed with questions. Who is the father? People whispered. No one had ever heard of Ngozi having a serious relationship, much less a husband or a boyfriend. One afternoon, Chidinma dropped by her husband's office with lunch. Knowing his schedule has been incredibly busy, she entered the office holding a neatly packed lunch for her husband. As she walked past the desk, she noticed Ngozi, clearly pregnant, typing away. Surprised but not wanting to pray, she greeted her with a smile and entered her husband's office. Hi dear, I thought I should bring you a treat. You've been working so hard lately. Ejike looked up, startled and surprised. Thanks, Mma, you didn't have to. She sat the food on the desk, glancing around nervously before bringing up what was on her mind. By the way, I noticed Ngozi is pregnant. I didn't know she was married. Ejike shrugged, keeping his eyes on his papers. I don't know much about her personal life, he said dismissively. Something about his response nagged at Chidinma, but she left it alone for the time being. Later that evening, Chidinma called Ngozi to ask about her observation. Ngozi dear, I never knew you were married. You never mentioned it to me. Oh, it's my boyfriend who lives abroad, she said. I discovered I was pregnant after he traveled overseas, but he's been taking care of us remotely. Ngozi's explanations seemed to satisfy Chidinma, at least for the moment. Months rolled by and Ngozi eventually gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Chidinma and Ejike went to visit her at the hospital. To their surprise, they found her in tears, holding her newborn tightly. The baby's father has abandoned us, she cried. I have no place to go. My rent is overdue, and my landlord has thrown me out. I've been squatting with a friend, but I can't afford to go back there with a newborn. Moved by her desperation, Chidinma offered a solution before she could think twice. You can stay with us until you get back on your feet. Ejike stiffened, clearly unhappy with his wife's offer. Ngozi happily moved into Ejike's house with his daughter, with them now living in Ejike's home. Life took an unexpected turn. Suddenly, the late nights Ejike had spent at the office ended. He was home early, spending time with his wife, and their relationship began to improve. But as Ngozi's baby grew, questions arose once again. When it was time to enroll her in a school, Chidinma noticed something odd. Ngozi had given the baby Ejike's surname. At first, she assumed it was a coincidence. After all, people could have the same last name without being related. But when she confronted Ngozi about her concerns, Ngozi hesitated, unsure how to answer. Then she revealed that it was her ex-boyfriend's surname. He is not in the picture, she admitted, but this is his child. Chidinma's doubts grew. Could it all really be a coincidence? Was there something more between her husband and Ngozi that she had missed? Her thoughts were provoked, and she wondered, was it a coincidence that her husband's workload became overwhelming, requiring late nights at the office shortly after Ngozi joined the company as his personal assistant? Though Ejike has stopped coming home late, but now he seemed jumpy, as if he was waiting for something to go wrong. Ngozi, on the other hand, was as calm as ever. She played the part of a doting single mother perfectly, always thanking Chidinma for her kindness and keeping up the appearance of gratitude. One evening, Chidinma overheard a conversation that shattered the peace she had been clinging to. It was late and she had just finished putting the children to bed. As she walked into the sitting room, she heard voices, Ejike and Ngozi, speaking in hushed tones. She stopped and listened. I can't keep this up forever, Ejike said. It's only a matter of time before my wife finds out. She won't find out, Ngozi replied confidently, as long as we stick to the plan. You know it was her decision for you to be here, Ejike continued. I am not happy about it, but I didn't want to make her suspicious. Please leave. I will give you money to start a new life. You lured me into this, but I blame myself for not telling my wife from the start. As for my daughter, I will find the right time to tell my wife about all this, but you just have to leave. Chidinma's heart froze. She couldn't listen anymore. Her fears had just been confirmed. Something was going on between them. Her hands trembled as she left the sitting room. Her mind was spinning, replaying the brief conversation she had just overheard. What plan were they referring to? How could Ejike, the man she had built her life with, betray her like this? And with Ngozi, her friend, the woman she had taken into her home. She sat on the bed for hours, trying to make sense of it all. But no matter how hard she tried, there was no explanation that could justify what was happening. Her marriage was built on trust, and now that trust was shattered. By the time Ejike came to bed, Chidinma had made up her mind. She couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. She needed answers, and she wasn't going to sit quietly and wait for them to come to her. The next morning, a lazy Saturday morning, and none of them goes to work. She waited for the right moment to confront Ejike. He was in the balcony, scrolling through pictures in his phone. As if nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Chidinma went to the balcony. We need to talk, she said. He looked up, startled by her tone. Sure, what's on your mind? I overheard you talking to Ngozi last night. What are you hiding from me? Ejike's face palled. His hand, holding his phone, froze mid-air. For a moment, he didn't say anything, as if scrabbling to find an excuse. A way out, but there was no hiding now. No, Ejike, don't lie to me. I've known for months that something was off. You've been distant, staying late at work, and now this. Ngozi living in our house, her baby. It's all connected, isn't it? Ejike's shoulder slumped in defeat. I never meant for it to get this far, he said. Chidinma's heart shattered at his admission. She had hoped, deep down, that he would deny it, that she was wrong, but the truth was even more painful. How could you, she asked. I trusted you, Ejike. We had a life together, a family, and you threw it all away for her? Is the baby yours? She asked angrily. Ejike's silence spoke volumes. He couldn't look her in the eyes. I took Ngozi in because I thought she was abandoned and needed help. But all this time, you were lying to me, both of you. Ejike tried to reach for her, but she pulled away, her voice rising. How long, Ejike? How long have you been lying to me? Ejike stood still, looking defeated. It started when things got tough at work. I made a mistake, Mma. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Chidinma shook her head, backing away from him. Sorry? Sorry doesn't fix this. You've destroyed our family, Ejike. How am I supposed to trust you after this? Ejike stood there, speechless, his face lined with regret. But it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and Chidinma wasn't sure if there was any way to repair the broken pieces of her heart. Chidinma knew she had to talk to the woman who had not only betrayed her friendship, but had also come into her home and lied to her every day. She wasn't one for drama, but this situation was far beyond anything she had ever experienced. Chidinma walked into Ngozi, who was in the visitor's room. We need to talk, she said. I know everything, so my husband is your daughter's father, and you've been lying to me this entire time. You've manipulated your way into my home and life. How could you, Ngozi? I didn't mean for it to happen this way, Mma, my friend, but Ejike cares about me and my daughter. Cares about you? Do you honestly believe that? You were nothing more than a convenient distraction for him. Ngozi showed no sign of remorse. Ejike came to me, she said. You were not there for him when he needed you. You have no idea what you're talking about. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I was always there for him. You took advantage of a weak moment and made it worse, Chidinma said. You want to blame me for everything? Fine, but Ejike is just as responsible for this as I am. And now my daughter is here. She's his daughter, and nothing would change that. Chidinma's heart ached at the mention of the child. She had grown attached to the baby, despite everything, and the thought of her being a permanent reminder of her betrayal was too much to bear. I never wanted to hurt you, Mma, but now I can't change what's happened. And I won't let Ejike turn his back on his daughter. Chidinma didn't have the strength to argue anymore. The people she loved and cared for had betrayed her. All she knew was that she couldn't bear living under the same roof as them. Ejike was restless for the rest of the day, and at night he lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Guilt haunted him. He had never intended for things to turn out this way. His affair with Ngozi had started as a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment during a particularly stressful time at work. She had been there, flirtatious, available, and he had succumbed. It was just a one-time thing, but the consequences were enormous. Ejike had wanted to confess to his wife, but struggled to find the right words and approach. Things had already gone terribly wrong, and Ejike knew he couldn't let them escalate further. He made up his mind to make Ngozi leave his house. The next morning, Ejike insisted that Ngozi leave immediately. Despite the irreparable damage, he offered her money on one condition: She must stay away from his family. In return, he would take care of the child from afar. Chidinma struggled to let go, despite her undeniable love for Ejike. Trust, however, had been irreparably broken. Ejike spent days, weeks, and months begging for forgiveness. Finally, Chidinma relented. I've forgiven you, but trust is another matter. Without it, our marriage is doomed. As the couple attempted to rebuild, Ngozi masterfully played her role as an abandoned single mother, and she knew exactly what she was doing. However, Ejike paid no attention to her. It wasn't as if he had taken advantage of her and abandoned her. In fact, the situation was reversed. She had taken advantage of a vulnerable man. In the intervening months, Ngozi, now alone with her child and struggling to regain stability, began to feel remorseful for ruining Chidinma's home. She had taken advantage of a woman who had only shown her kindness. After careful consideration, she decided to seek Chidinma's forgiveness. And since she was barred from visiting and her number was blocked, she reached out to Chidinma's mother, confessing everything. Chidinma had kept the ordeal private, but her mother listened and had judged Ngozi's actions as a terrible repayment of kindness. It's a horrible way to repay good deeds, Chidinma's mother said. The damage is done and it can't be undone. I'll speak to my daughter. Chidinma's mother called her. It's normal to feel betrayed by your husband and friend right now. Ngozi told me everything. Your husband shares some blame, but don't be too hard on him. He's a good man, despite this unintentional mistake. Don't let it overshadow his other qualities. Oh, Mama, she told you, Chidinma asked. How could they do this to me, Mama? Like I said, my daughter, the deed is done and can't be undone. Try to forgive and rebuild your family. Chidinma heeded her mother's advice. Having already forgiven Ejike but struggling to trust him again, gradually she resumed her life with him. As if nothing had happened, Ejike atoned for his sin. To confirm the child's paternity, Chidinma suggested a DNA test. Considering Ejike's one-time lapse, thankfully the results cleared him. Unbeknownst to Ngozi, the child's father was one of the numerous men she had befriended during her job search. Relieved and concerned for the child's well-being, the couple gifted Ngozi set-up capital to begin anew. Grateful, Ngozi accepted and moved on. Chidinma and Ejike's life gradually returned to normal. And though trust was broken, it grew back with time.